podcast where myself, Paul, and my brother John.
Hello.
Totally prepared intro there. We'll be basically creating a love letter to the game of football. So one of the things we used to do on very long car journeys, we used to use that time to think about what would be the best team we could create under a certain scenario. And when we'd go and watch games, we'd do this, and we thought, and a smattering of listeners so far have agreed with us.
Well, no one's told us that we're wrong.
Yeah, but one of the things that we really do encourage with this is for people to give their opinion. We're not saying in any way this is a definitive list, that this is we are right, you are wrong. We welcome other people's opinion. So we've been having a bit of a theme of the Premier League. And what we wanted to do was look at the Premier League in a very specific detail. So one of the things that kind of came with the Premier League and when football opened up with the Bosman ruling and player movement within the EU became much more easy. As a Man United fan, I remember us being limited to 3 foreign players in Europe and getting absolutely crushed by the Cruyff Dream Team.
Well, the player you missed out in that game was Schmeichel.
That's right. And watching Gary Walsh get schooled by Romario is not a sentence I thought I'd be saying nearly 30 years later.
Well, exactly. One of the reasons we're doing the Premier League is it is 30 years old. It's the 30-year celebration at the moment. If you've got Amazon Prime, there's some nice little things going up. Like there was one about the Bergkamp goal. Like, is this the best goal? It's Newcastle and the Newcastle 3 Liverpool 4 game, stuff like that. So just keep an eye out. There's some good stuff going on.
As soon as you hear that score, you just see Kevin Keegan slumped over an adverse. Yeah,
I would love it if we beat them.
There's no manager like him anymore.
No.
So one of the things we really saw was the introduction of foreign players coming into teams, and we wanted to break this down. So rather than doing a list of the best foreign imports into the Premier League, because the problem is there's a high number recently, and there's specialised players, and there's world-class players who've come through the Premier League. But I want to start by having a look at the first 5 years. So I want to look at 92 to 97. And then I'd like to expand upon that. But 92 to 97 were very specific players coming in.
We're going to look at the foreign ones, aren't we?
But this is it. I mean, you had very specific foreign players coming in, and they had to be players who'd done something, were regular internationals, and they'd fit into your team. You wouldn't be able to, Man United buying Hannibal Mejbri from Monaco, spending 9 million quid on a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
You couldn't do an equivalent transfer to that in 92 to 97.
No. There you go. A little question for you here. How many foreign players were in the first weekend games of the Premier League? How many foreign players were there?
From looking through some of the squads, I'd say there were less than 50.
13.
Good Lord.
So it was just, I remember at the time, it felt very novelty. Like, we're buying a German right back. And you're like, oh, that's exciting. We're buying a Romanian left winger. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's like, it was before Wikipedia, before YouTube compilations. Like, It was a different age, and if you wanted to find out about Man United buying that Dutch centre-back from PSV, you had to open up World Soccer and see what Kira Radnic had to say about it. Yeah, exactly, yeah. It was a better time.
It was a time of intrigue, rather than, where Adrien Rabiot might be coming to Manchester United. Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go on YouTube and I'll look at 10 minutes of Adrien Rabiot highlights.
Yeah, no, I preferred the mystery of it all, but that's the world we live in now. But yes, we're picking a very specific time. So we've gone with 92 to 97.
Correct. And we're going to be having a look at the best foreign players of that time. Now, again, I want to recreate what we do at the beginning of this podcast. This is our opinion. This isn't the opinion.
There's no statistical basis for this. It's a lot of the time it's just our favourites. It doesn't mean they're the best or whatever else. But we're not.
We're basically playing 1 to 11 Culverhouse.
Exactly. we're not analysts on The Athletic, or there was no FB ref looking up here, or we've not gone Y Scout.
You can't subscribe to me on YouTube. I don't care.
No. But yeah, let's go in, because I get the feeling you've gone 4-4-2.
It's the early 90s. It's the early to mid 90s. What other formations are there?
Well, I've gone 3-4-3 because
You don't want to pick any. You don't want to pick any fullbacks. You're the fullback cheat.
well, no, I picked two fullbacks as wing backs, because a lot of teams played wing backs at this point. Of course, 96, England played 3-4-2-1.
The Christmas tree.
So it actually is and you'll see why I've gone with this specific formation very early on.
So you can fit 3 strikers in.
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I have... No, because I've only fit... Look, we'll get into it. But we always start off with goalkeeper, and this might be the most obvious goalkeeper we've ever done. So who is the best goalkeeper in the Premier League, 92 to 97? It doesn't matter, foreign or not.
Ludek McCloskey. No, of course, it's Peter Schmeichel.
It's Peter Schmeichel, of course it is.
I didn't know whether to go for McCloskey or Cernacek.
I mean, I literally watched him yesterday concede 4 goals against Liverpool. I can't have Pavel Cernacek.
That's fair. Peter Schmeichel is someone we've spoken about in previous episodes, and you can't underestimate the impact he had on that United team in the early years of the Premier League. I mean, in the 90s, he was a trophy machine. Internationally and club level.
Yes, I mean, 92, of course, he starts the Premier League as European champion. I mean, he's just... he's the best goalkeeper I've ever seen.
He had everything.
Yeah. I think I mentioned a while ago about the Danish coach who said, if you start Peter Schmeichel, you start 1-0 up.
Moller Nielsen.
Yeah, and you're being like, it's true, because he was capable of some amazing stuff. He marshalled your defence. He very rarely makes mistakes.
Had an aura to him as well.
Yeah,
had this kind of. He unsettled players. Obviously, him and Ian Wright had that very storied rivalry, but Ian Wright didn't tend to do that well against him because he got into Ian Wright's head.
Yeah, I think as well, he was in a world where the other goalkeepers in the league were people like John Lukic and even David Seaman. He was just so far ahead, athletically. When he came out and did, star jumped at you, I'd have shat myself.
Yeah, this gigantic blonde Danish,
behemoth.
Yeah, 6 foot plus monster star jumping at you.
Yeah,
there's anybody who says anything different.
He's a liar.
Yeah, I'd welcome any challenge, but I can't see how you would.
No, so we can move on very quickly. So I'm going to start here because I'm going to play my sweeper.
Okay.
The first foreign player who joined the Premier League, and it suddenly felt, okay, this feels like this is really exciting, it's cool, and it felt an international product. And I hate saying product, but you know what I mean.
Very much so.
It's Ruud Gullit.
Now, I have him in another part of the team, and I agree with you for that, because he brought legitimacy as a foreign player coming. Yeah, England seemed a legitimate location to come to as a foreign player.
There were other players who had joined before then, and I won't mention because I will mention them later. But it felt sort of end, how we judge America now. It felt like an end of career tour. I'm going to take some of the money. But this one, although it was near the end of his career, it felt legitimate, and that's what it did. That's what it did. he joined Chelsea, and effectively, Glenn Hoddle had this idea that he'd have Hullet as his sweeper, because Hullet could play anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, he's brilliant up front. He could boss the midfield, and he can play in defence. He's the perfect footballer. But yeah, Hoddle wanted him to play in defence, play as a sweeper, basically to be their playmaker, start the ball, move it out to the wings, and but it turns out that when he joined, the wing backs that he was playing with at Chelsea weren't as good as the ones he'd been playing with at AC Milan. So he was playing the balls, but they weren't getting it. But
Graham Lasso and Paolo Maldini aren't comparable.
No, well, of course, Graham Lasso at this point was
Southampton.
was at no, he's at Blackburn, wasn't he?
Of course, yeah.
So
Scott Minto.
yeah, so but they did bring someone in for him later, and I will get into that.
I agree.
But later in the season, they had to move him into midfield because effectively they didn't have the players around him to make the most of what they wanted him to do. But even then, he was still brilliant.
Agree completely.
Effectively, you want a team of 10 Hullets.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's my first player, Ruud Gullit.
I'm going to go with my right back. Then
Okay.
I'm going to go with Dan Petrescu.
Who is my right wing back?
The Romania team of the 90s, we've mentioned when we've spoken about Hagi previously, but that wasn't just a team of Georgi Hagi. There was also some very, your
Dumitrescu's, Popescu's, Andrew Petrescu, who was the right back.
Yeah, and starting at Sheffield Wednesday, then coming across to Chelsea. He there's a reason he lasted so long in the Premier League. He was just a quality player.
Yeah. Felt like one of the first sort of modern sort of fullbacks. When he came to Sheffield Wednesday, and it was then at Chelsea. Won the League Cup, FA Cup. I think they won the Cup Winners' Cup. Yeah, they won the Cup Winners' Cup. Basically, was there until he fell out with Gianluca Vialli. But yeah, he was just fun to watch, wasn't he? He was all action, bombing up the right wing, getting back. I thought just what a fun player to watch.
Yeah, and he was someone who just, again, because following the 94 World Cup and these foreign players on a stage and that Romania team was so dynamic, Dan Petrescu there was an air of intrigue with him coming in. So, and him joining Sheffield Wednesday as well.
Yeah, it
felt so un-Sheffield Wednesday.
Well, when you look at it now, yeah, but back then Sheffield Wednesday were they would be a upper mid-table team,
and they were a team that took chances on players. Like they were the team that bought Chris Waddle back from France. They were the team that took a chance on Benito Carboni, Paolo Di Canio, loads of other players, and Roland Nielsen. Earlier on, but there was him. It felt. That was one of those signings, a bit like Gullit, where it was a bit like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
So I agree. He was Gullit was the first name on my team sheet, quickly followed by Dan Petrescu. Just brilliant. I mean, as well, you mentioned Ronald Nielsen. I did like Ronald Nielsen. I thought he was very good, but he unfortunately doesn't make my team. So where next, Paul?
I'm going to go to the centre back. So a player who came in with no fanfare at all is Lucas Radibi.
I've got Lucas Radibi.
Of course, you have Leeds fans sat there in your Leeds shirt.
I am actually sat in my Leeds shirt, but yeah, no, he was effectively brought in to help Phil Masinga integrate into the team, who was bought as a forward. I think basically it was like 250,000 for Lucas Radebe.
Phil Masinga was the South African international, the more tenured South African. And the player, came in with, because Phil Masinga came from Bari, didn't he, or something like that?
Yeah, I'm just looking him up now. Because fortunately, Phil Masinga is no longer with us. Oh no, Phil Masinga came from Mamelodi Sundowns.
Oh, prove me wrong.
He went to Bari after Leeds.
And did well there.
Yes, but yeah. Turns out actually Lucas Radebe and Masinga weren't that close and didn't really get on. But the person brought in as the sort of make weight created a just a incredibly tenured career. And basically, if any time like Leeds are doing something and you hear the Chiefs involved, I'm really excited about it because it was brilliant.
Yeah, and he was one of those players who, kind of the opposite to what we've been saying with Hullett and Petrescu, he kind of grew into the role and just became this. Leeds under George Graham couldn't score for toffee, but were the most strict defensive team going.
Oh, yeah. Like, we scored 28 goals that season.
Fabrizio Ravanelli scored more goals than Leeds.
Yeah.
In a team that went down.
The team that went down, yeah. Famously as well, could play in goal. So John Lukic got injured once against Man United. Oh, no, it was Mark Beanie even got sent off against Man United. So played 73 minutes in goal against the champions and conceded 1 goal. He was brilliant. Could play midfield as well. It's a shame his career ended like it did because basically he was he had bad knee, bad ankle injuries, and just couldn't. I think 2 years basically without a game. And just sort of frittered away at a time when actually looked like Leeds were starting to get good. But yeah, no, absolutely wonderful player. And just a pleasure to watch.
In terms of the timescale we're looking at, probably wasn't Lucas Radebe at his best, but at the same, I felt kind of slightly after Radebe truly hit form, but again, you can't. The impact he had on Leeds moving forward and from this date was enough for me to warrant him being in the team. And by 1997, he was becoming the end of the 97 season. He was becoming the player we saw him be. So, like by 98, he was the captain of Leeds. He just fits in. Well, I'm scared we're going to agree on everything so far. So my next defender is Philippe Albert.
Yeah, same.
We've done a kind of a love letter to Philippe Albert on players who didn't win the Premier League.
Yeah,
but again, a player who just looked like a postman and didn't play like one.
I think it was the beard, not the beard, the moustache. But no, he was. I mean, if you can have attack-minded centre-backs, Philippe Albert was, once again, in my team, I've got 2 playmakers. I have Hullett and Albert, and I watched some games of like around 1995, 96, back in the Premier League time, and defenders back then are like proper defenders. You've got like Steve Bruce and Pallister, who were great at stopping forwards, but you watch football now and you don't, most defenders now can pass the ball pretty efficiently, bring the ball out of defence. And Albert he could do that. He was such a classy defender. and yeah, just was an absolute joy to watch. And of course, anyone who remembers his lob on Schmeichel in the 5-0, just a chef's kiss of a goal.
Superb. So yeah, just a very quality player. I mean, as a United fan so far, having Philip Albert and Lucas Radebe hurts.
Well, you were still having quite British defenders at this point.
In the early parts of the Premier League, you would struggle to find better centre-backs than Pallister and Bruce.
How about Lucas Radebe and Philip Albert?
True.
But very different type of defenders.
So I'm going to go to my left back, who I imagine is also your left wing back, because when you do research around this time, and believe it or not, we do research for this. My left back is Stig Inge Bjornaby.
Same.
So
we turn up and we don't talk about this before. We want to make it.
We want to make it. I can't think of the word. It's got to be surprising. We want to surprise each other with this.
But actually, I'm now less than surprised. But yeah,
as we have the same defence.
But I have to remember, it is harder because there wasn't
the same
level of. These were all very exciting players to watch, and when they joined. Maybe not Bjornaby, who.
Bjornaby was a very, very good player. You've got to remember, he was in the team of the year for the Premier League 95-96.
Yep.
Liverpool didn't win the league at that time. As a United fan, Liverpool didn't win the league at that time, which was.
Well, they were third.
They were the Roy Evans pre the job share with Houllier. Stig Inge Bjornaby was great. Was really, really great.
Because was it 96 when Man United pulled back the 12-point deficit.
Yes.
And that season Liverpool came third. They were still like Newcastle 3, Liverpool 4. Both teams were in the title race, really. But
Oh yeah, and that Liverpool team at that time with McManaman, Collymore, Fowler,
Mark Wright in defence with him.
Who was still a quality player. You still had John Barnes there.
Yeah.
There were some good players in that Liverpool team, and Stig Inge Bjornaby was the best left back in the Premier League according to the Premier League in 95-96.
Yep.
So I went for Stig Inge Bjornaby because he's also one of these players I remember being decent.
Yeah, was always a very dependable. He had seasons where he was injured, but yeah, you'd get you could play him at left back and you'd always get a 6 or 7 out of 10 performance. Yeah, and it was a brilliant player. So no, I had no issues putting him in my team.
So that's our defence sorted. I'm gonna start by giving you one of my sentiments, which is Ruud Gullit. We've spoken about him.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Could I have your first sentiment?
Di Matteo.
Again, really quality player, and I think injuries robbed us of the best of him.
Yeah, but I mean, I remember him joining because he was quite expensive for the time.
4.5 million, I believe.
Joining from Lazio, and once again, it felt like they'd bought a star, really, because he had Italy caps, and we were a couple of years off from seeing them in the World Cup final, not with him, but just a great player to watch. Yeah, it's a shame. A triple leg fracture basically cost him his career, and he did come back for a bit as a manager, of course, infamously won the Champions League. We've not I mean, he came back with Villa, but he was very poor there. But I mean, quite frankly, anyone at that point would have been poor. They were a basket case club. But yeah, he was solid defensively, but he could dictate play, and he was just a breath of fresh air in the Premier League when he came in.
Yeah, and Chelsea, a lot of people say, kind of Chelsea bringing in Hullett as manager, and at the time he was their most successful manager, Hullett, with what he did with the FA Cup and them winning the Cup Winners' Cup.
Yep.
So there was some really, Vialli coming in, Petrescu moving in, and there's a lot of good players coming into Chelsea, but he felt like, you felt like we were getting one over Italian football, which didn't happen very often.
Yeah, it wasn't often we bought one of theirs to the Premier League.
Yeah. So
yeah, who have you got? Who else have you got in midfield?
It's a slight famine because he represented a country that wasn't England, but you could argue he's English. Muzzy is it?
Yeah, I didn't even think of it, but yeah, I mean, he plays for Turkey, so he's Turkish.
Leicester, in terms of timescales, we're right on the edge, but I loved Muzzy as a player.
He was very good for Leicester. Joined them in '96, and he was a very good, a very attacking minded player, and it's strange when you see Leicester now as this sort of stable of the upper mid card of like Premier League football, or sort of chasing Champions League. But back then they were a team that was always going to be struggling to survive, and but they would make cup finals. He was great. No, I forgot about Muzzy. Is it? Because I've got Juninho in my midfield,
who we've spoken about in 3 other editions.
We have, but I mostly in those other editions I've mainly forgot Juninho, and I was very determined this year. I didn't want to forget Juninho.
That's fair.
So that is my Basically, that's my midfield. So you can now do your wingers.
I had someone in mind if you didn't accept.
Okay.
If you were unwilling to accept.
No, I'm going to accept Muzzy is it, because even though he was born in London, he is a Turkish. He plays for Turkey. So yeah, why I'm fine. But who was your replacement if not?
My replacement was Gianfranco Zola, who I was also going to put at right mid. But there's another player I'd like to put at right mid.
Okay.
But he's just on the edge.
Fair enough. So yeah.
So Zola was, again, the Parma team that was industrious and won the UEFA Cup, and Asprilla, Zola, Brolin, who all played in the Premier League and came to the Premier League. There were some fantastic players, and I know we'll talk about that Parma team again, I am sure, in future editions.
Yep.
But Zola coming in again felt like we were getting a star.
Yes.
Someone who played for the Italian national team and just could do everything, and this tiny little guy turning up on the field and just dictating play. I loved him as a player, and also, the effect he had on Chelsea in terms of, again, airing an air of legitimacy to them.
Yeah. I didn't pick Zola, and you'll see why I didn't pick Zola. I may pick him in later episodes because he just got better and better, and actually, his final year at Chelsea is actually one of his more productive. Bizarrely, he just got better with age.
because wasn't there the rumour that Abramovich came in, saw he'd arranged the transfer to, I can't remember where he went, to him is Cagliari. And offered to buy him back from Cagliari because he was that, felt it was that important.
Yeah, basically offered to tear the contract up, but he said, I've given my word. There's a great story from Tony DeRigo when they went out to warm up for the
90 World
Cup, and they played like a team of Sicilian invitational players, and they were like, "Who's that little short ass trying to score from corners?" And then someone went, "Yeah, he's Diego Maradona's stand-in at Napoli," and they were like, "Oh shit, yeah, he might be pretty good then." But yeah, they were like, "Oh yeah, no, who's this short ass?" Turned out to be Gianfranco Zola, who was just starting to make his name in Serie A at the time. But yeah, just a wonderful player. So yeah, you can't be Maradona standing if you're not very good, quite frankly. And yeah, just brilliant to watch.
So the notable mention I'd like to give for my right midfield is Attilio Lombardo going to Crystal Palace.
Yes.
So Attilio Lombardo was playing for Juventus, was in a team that went to they were a team that won European trophies, won the European Cup. And actually, were in 2 finals, weren't they?
Yep.
He'd been in a team that made it to 2 European finals and then moved to Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
Which was just felt so weird. And obviously I know after the date we've put forward this, but becoming their manager as well.
Yes.
But people forget that him at Palace, he got a call up back to the Italy squad based on his performances at Palace.
He started off very well, and I think at one point they were quite happily in mid-table, but by the time he came back, they were bottom, basically, and his return helped, but they were still relegated. And especially, he didn't speak much English, so they brought in an interpreter for him. Do you remember who his interpreter was? Thomas Brolin.
Oh God.
Who doesn't make this list because
he made our worst transfers list.
And
I think the thing that a lot of people felt there were some retirement tours that came into the Premier League around this time. Lombardo wasn't. You saw what Lombardo did after leaving Palace.
Well, exactly. Yeah, he went on to Lazio, didn't he? Won the league.
Yeah, and he'd also won the cup for them. Basically, he won the Cup Winners' Cup with them, and was a very, very good player still.
He was one of those players that was. We knew him because we were getting Football Italia on a Sunday, and then on a Wednesday we'd watch the Champions League, and Juventus were generally always around, and so I think especially with his bald head, he sort of stood out.
Yes.
Fantasy football used to sort of have a section, about him, just basically people doing the Lombardo with ball caps on, but yeah, it felt big when he joined, even though I think from the looks of it, he didn't have a very good last season at Juventus, but it just felt big news that he joined. And I think we knew him as well from Sampdoria as well, who were, because that's when we started watching Football Italia.
It was one of those, it felt a very teletext signing that actually came true.
Yeah.
That's where we are there. I'm going to move across to my left mid.
Okay.
Because you don't have a left mid.
I don't have a left mid, no.
David Ginola.
I wanted to put David Ginola in my team, but I didn't have. I was considering who I could thumb in at left wing back because Stig Inge Bjornaby just didn't seem sexy enough.
Yeah, I get that.
So I was stuck between, and then I thought, no, I'm not going to thumb it in. I'm going to actually play a. But there was 2 choices, which was David Ginola or Patrick Berger to thumb in.
Patrick Berger, hell of a player.
But yeah, I didn't. I decided not to thumb them in. But then I counted them in my notable box of players here.
David Ginola was well, the fact that I'm pronouncing David, Dave Ginola.
Yeah.
The impact he had on the Premier League, he was one of like those marketable foreign players that came in, and he was the first player Newcastle felt like oh wow, yeah, him, I've heard of him. They've spent $4.5 million on him. Wow.
Yeah. They went from sort of upstarts to we take them seriously now.
Yeah.
Like once again, we knew Paris Saint-Germain. And like I think he turned down Barcelona to join Newcastle. And like I think Barcelona and Madrid were after him, and somehow he ended up in Newcastle. But he was the star player in the entertainers. Les Ferdinand got the goals. Albert was fun to watch in defence. But you'd pay money to go watch Ginola.
Oh, absolutely. He had this dynamism to him. He was exciting when he got the ball. You knew he'd be taking players on, this mane of hair running down the wing, and just had everything, could take men on. And there's that goal against, I know this may have been just in 97 when he moved to Spurs.
I think, is that 98, 99? I think, when he moved to, but yeah, like, it still doesn't matter really because he was still there in 95, and he was brilliant. I remember him scoring, I think, against Metz in the UEFA Cup. Once again, like, he reminds me a bit of a prototype, but very handsome Iron Robben.
Yeah.
He's gonna run down the left wing. He's gonna move in on his right foot, and he is gonna score. But you just have to stop it, and you can't. So and like back then he could he could put in the ammunition for Les Ferdinand and Faustino Asprilla. Just a wonderful player. Yeah. Of all the players I couldn't fit in my squad, I was saddest about Ginola.
Yeah, he was just a fantastic player.
I would also say if I'd have had a right winger or right midfielder, I'd have had Andrei Kanchelskis.
Yeah, Man United and Everton. The creator of the best skill move of all time.
Yeah, standing on the ball and saluting.
No, the other one.
Or when he just
stops in front of the ball, spins round himself without touching the ball and carries on.
Yeah.
Just Andrei Kanchelskis ranges into YouTube and you'll see those amazing things. And also, I can guarantee at least 2 casts, minimum of 2 free casts given to kids for trying to stand on the ball and salute.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, it's absolute injury waiting to happen.
But yeah, he was one of the non-EU players Man United could have, and just was, if you're going to be displaced by David Beckham, you've got to be.
Yeah, fell out with Fergie at the end of his Man U stint.
Went to Fiorentina, didn't he?
And then and sort of he kept appearing back in the Premier League, or in England, in Britain with Rangers, and I think went to Southampton. Never was, but when he was at Man United and especially at Everton, he was really, really good for Everton. So yeah, absolute beast. But who have you got? Is that your midfield done now?
It is, yeah. I'd like to move on to my strikers.
Who are your strikers?
So I would like to start with Eric Cantona.
I've got Eric Cantona.
Because
he would. He was. He was for. When did he retire? Was it 97 he retired?
Yeah.
He was for 5 years. He was the biggest name in the Premier League. The most exciting footballer.
He brought headlines. He turned heads, and also was very good for Man United in Europe as well. We talked about Juve and getting to the final twice. We got to the semis twice with him.
Yeah, I'd like to do a deep dive on Cantona at some point.
Yeah. The story I like, and I've been reading Andy Cole's autobiography recently, and all the players were going to I can't remember, some sort of benefit, and they're all there in black tie, and then Eric Cantona turns up in a lime green suit, and everyone's like, "Oh God, Ferguson's going to be so angry when he sees him." So Ferguson turns up, sees everyone, kind of like walks down a line, looks up and down Eric. Nice suit, Eric. So he gave him a type of treatment where other managers had fallen out with him because they expected him to fit in. Ferguson realised he was this maverick personality and gave him the freedom he wanted. Treated him differently to everyone else because he delivered. And my God, he delivered.
I read Daniel Story's book, The 250 Days, which is about the 250 days he doesn't play. Yeah. I think Fergie basically he saw a lot of himself in Cantona, so did give him the kid gloves and basically fluffed his ego. I mean, like during the ban, he'd agreed to move to Inter Milan, and only came back because of Fergie's management, basically, because he just hated the English press and he hated the FA, and he felt he was being unfairly treated. And looking back, you can see how he felt, why he felt that. But yeah, I mean, it hurts because obviously being a Leeds fan, we let him go because Wilkinson couldn't have the same relationship with him and found him hard to get on with. But he was just a wonderful player. And for a man with the ego that he does, was also very selfless. So, would provide, provide assists for the other players. Like never really, he never went above 20 goals in a season. But, just was there to help the other players reach their goals, and as well, it was great for the youth team. He sort of was a sort of added an air of professionalism to Man United, which, quite frankly, they could do with now. They need to find their new Cantona.
Yes, they do. They do. So, alongside Cantona, a player who had kind of been very unfairly treated at his previous club, and again, one of those players, and I mean no disrespect to Arsenal fans, sorry to ruin, who I'm going for now, but sorry, no disrespect to Arsenal fans, him moving to Arsenal felt very strange because Arsenal weren't a great team. They were being managed by Bruce Rioch.
Yeah.
The kind of the shine had come off the apple with George Graham leaving.
They were looking for direction, I think is how we can define it.
Yeah, and Dennis Bergkamp hadn't had a very good time at Inter. Had been offered a place in Cruyff's dream team and was persuaded to join Inter instead by the chairman because we're going to build the team around you. We're going to become an attacking force with you there, Dennis, leading the line. No, as he just watched, as he watched 9 men 80 yards down the pitch from him.
Yeah,
but him moving to Arsenal felt very kind of, Arsenal mean business now.
Yeah.
And he had the effect that on Arsenal that Cantona had for United. Him coming in, I felt, because he wasn't of the drinking culture.
No, he was very professional, but as well, he was just on the pitch. They were both smarter than everyone else around them. And Bergkamp, I think, took that to another degree from Cantona.
Oh, Cantona on the pitch was a very good team player. Bergkamp seemed to be playing a different game.
Yeah.
And he was playing a different game. It was playing your one better than you.
He was playing it almost at his own speed, wasn't he? And he was always 2 or 3 seemingly steps ahead of them. But yeah, it's a shame because I guess back then all players sort of wanted to play in Serie A, so you can see why it just didn't work. But I'm glad in a way, because if he'd have gone to Real Madrid or Barcelona to go with Cruyff,
he wouldn't have been playing for Arsenal.
He would never have been playing for Arsenal. They'd have made something of him, and it was an absolute pleasure to watch him for 9 years.
Absolutely, you know, you can always tell how well a player's done by if they have a fucking statue of them
Exactly.
outside the ground. Yeah, he was... Arsenal's success they had under Wenger, I do not think would have been possible without Dennis Bergkamp.
No. I mean, you look at the players Henry's played with. You know, he's played with the French national team with Zizou. He's played with Barcelona with, you know, the Messis, Xavis, Iniestas. And if you ask, I've seen him asked who's the best player you've played with, it's Dennis Bergkamp.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just, you could play him, just absolutely, you know. As well, what I quite liked about him, he was a big player, like he was over 6 foot, you know, and he had a dirty streak in him. Dennis, I think he was sent off quite a few times. You know, some elbows, some 2-footed tackles. I kind of like a skill player with an edge, but yeah, in his time he just basically scored some of the best goals I've ever seen in the Premier League or in the world. Like, just an absolute joy to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he just again, this, you can't put an emphasis enough on investing in foreign players becoming legitimate without looking at these two strikers.
Yeah.
So
they Cantona effectively, I think, started it, and what his effect on Man United, I think it can be seen for the next 10 years after he retired. That's how great it was. Bergkamp just legitimised the Premier League as a thing, and yeah, just I'd have paid money to go just watch Bergkamp do keep-ups for half an hour.
yeah.
So yeah, I still have another forward.
And who have you gone for, sir?
He only played in the Premier League for 1 year, but once again, it felt a surprise. Back then as well, transfer gossip wasn't what it was. So suddenly, you know, you turn on teletext and you'd be like, how have Tottenham done that? And it's Jurgen Klinsmann.
Yeah, because I think him as a manager afterwards, potentially, and people have kind of... He was a constant of the early to mid-90s.
Well,
He only played for good teams. The German national team, I mean, World Cup winner in 1990, Euro winner in 96. He came into Tottenham and just... He didn't seem to have a weakness as a player.
no.
Great in the air, good with his feet, had the ability to control his body. Everything seemed to be kind of wanting to will the ball into the net, and kind of a lack of respect for himself. And the one thing that kind of set him apart from everyone else as well was he played the press masterfully.
Yeah. Yeah, so of course when he joined, one of the things about him was that
The reputation as a diver.
a reputation as a diver. And I remember the Sun on the morning of the game had done a how to dive like Klinsmann. So he scores the goal, scores, I think it's an equaliser, or it was a winner. They won the 3-2.
A lovely headed goal.
Really, really great headed goal. Runs off to the corner, does the Klinsmann dive, and instantly everyone's like, this guy's all right.
And it was a press conference he did as well, where he was just very humble and kind of joked about him diving. I think also he was the cultural impact, because no matter the weather, and I say this because believe me, from being in school at that time, no matter the weather, if we were playing a game and you scored, you were doing the Klinsmann.
You did the Klinsmann, yeah. Yeah. Played 30 games, scored 21 goals in that first season. Yeah. You know, so good that he went back to Bayern Munich.
Won the UEFA Cup.
Was their top goal scorer for the 2 years he was there. And he set a goal scoring record of 15 in 12 games. Yeah.
It kind of falls into, because Germany were that good at that time. Almost people forget how good he was. But yeah, I found it very hard to displace him. Cantona and Bergkamp, I felt, were there because of longevity.
No one's going to argue that Cantona and Bergkamp. I just luckily had a space for a out and out striker. I considered Tony Yeboah because
you're a Leeds fan.
I'm a Leeds fan, and if we're talking,
if you take away two Thunder Bastards, what else did Tony Yeboah do?
We also scored some other Thunder Bastards. Like, if you watch his goal against West Ham, I think on the first day of the season, it's incredible. Takes the ball down from 30 yards, runs in, and absolutely smashes it past McCloskey. But yeah, once again, he didn't. Wasn't there long enough. I also mentioned Dwight York, because it's the start of him coming through. He gets better elsewhere, but really, really just a lovely player to watch. But do you want to take us through your starting 11?
Yeah, absolutely. So in goal, I have Schmeichel, a defence of Bjornaby, Albert, Radibi and Petrescu. I have a midfield of Zola, Hullet, Izik, Ginola.
Nice.
With a forward line of Cantona and Bergkamp.
Well, I've got Schmeichel in goal. In front of him, Wood Hullet as a sweeper. Bjornaby, Radibi, Albert, Petrescu. In midfield, Di Matteo and Juninho. And then Cantona, Bergkamp and Klinsmann up front. We'll be back shortly with another 1 to 11.
And what's important with this is we value your opinion. So you can find us on Twitter,
the 1 to 11 pod. You
can find us on Instagram,
the 1 to 11 pod.
You can find me outside most food establishments on a Friday or Saturday. In all seriousness, if you have somebody who you feel it's an absolute travesty that we didn't include, let us know. We'd love to discuss it, and if your opinion is that good, we'd love to have you on to talk about it with us.
Exactly. If there's something a theme you want to discuss, get in touch. We'd love to.
If you're shaking with rage because of our lack of Paolo One Chop,
it's always Paolo One Chop,
or Brian Roy.
Yeah. But just thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon.
Absolutely.